ICAC is investigating a medical center headed by wife of the Chinese university's president. Hong Kong's economic growth slows down in the second quarter. A man is uncovered by Chinese authorities as spying for the CIA. Hello and welcome to TVB News. The Independent Commission Against Corruption is investigating a medical research center under the Chinese University of Hong Kong over possible corruption and misconduct in public office. No arrests have been made so far. The ICAC has not commented further on the matter. Cecilia Low, the wife of the university's president, reportedly operates the center. Sharon Tang reports.
Sources say the center under investigation by the city's anti-graft agency is the Chinese University's Cardiovascular Genetic Research Center, located at the Lo Chi Wu Clinical Sciences Building in the Prince of Wales Hospital. There were still people working in the office this afternoon. Responding to our inquiries, the ICAC said a probe into a medical research center under CUHK is underway. The center was set up in 2018, and the ICAC believes there are people who have performed corrupt acts while handling funds. Today, ICAC officers carried out an investigation at CUHK with a court warrant and met with relevant parties. According to CUHK's website, the medical center consists of 6 researchers and it has published 5 research findings this year. The head of the center is Cecilia Low, the wife of the president of the Chinese University, Rocky Tuan. Low is a visiting professor of the Department of Medicine and Therapeutics as well as Pediatrics at CUHK. She graduated from MIT in 1974 before pursuing a PhD at the Rockefeller University. Low also spends time conducting research in the US and teaching at the University of Pittsburgh. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Hong Kong's economy grew by 1.5% year-on-year in the second quarter, a slowdown from the first quarter's growth. This comes with the government having adjusted its GDP growth forecast for this year to between 4 to 5%. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Normality might be back in Hong Kong after the pandemic, but the economy is having a hard time playing catch-up. The government announced that GDP growth in the second quarter showed signs of an economic slowdown, rising by just 1.5% on a year-on-year basis, while dropping by 1.3% quarter-on-quarter. The government previously forecasted GDP growth of 3.3 to 5.5% this year. This has now been revised to between 4 and 5%. To meet such a forecast, the next 2 quarters must see a minimum growth of 5.8% for the city.
Various provincial governments and departments rolled out a series of measures to boost consumption and boost internal consumption. They also relaxed measures in controlling the property market. All these stimulus measures will improve the business confidence in Hong Kong and the mainland.
Service exports had the best performance, having increased by over 20%. This due to the influx of tourists in the city during the last quarter. Private consumption also rose by 8.2% year-on-year. But as Hong Kong's monetary policy further tightened, overall investment spending saw a mild decline of 0.9%. Some analysts, such as Professor Kevin Choi from Clemson University in the U.S., believe foreign investors remain skeptical about committing their money to the city, adding that Hong Kong fell out of the top 3 spots in global IPO rankings. The government hopes the arrival of more tourists will foster GDP growth primarily through private consumption and tourism services. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The government has been pinning its hopes on tourism to buoy up the economy, but the hospitality industry has found mainland tourists are spending less than before the pandemic. The hotel sector is also worried that its manpower crunch might hamstring the city's economic recovery. Jackie Lin reports.
In July, Hong Kong recorded 3.58 million visitors. That's a rise of more than 30% month-on-month. More than 80% or nearly 3 million are mainland tourists, marking a return to 70% of pre-pandemic levels. Half of the remaining 610,000 visitors in July took short trips to Hong Kong, with the most marked surges recorded among Filipino and Thai travelers. The Hong Kong Tourism Board said tourists have looked for more diverse and deeper experience while traveling.
內地嘅旅客啦。
Timothy Choi, executive director of the Hong Kong Tourism Association, echoed the idea, saying mainland tourists are no longer focused on just shopping trips but cultural explorations.
最擔心都係我哋酒店人手嘅情況。
Casper Choi, executive director of the Federation of Hong Kong Hotel Owners, meanwhile, is worried about the lack of manpower to meet market demand for hotel services, especially for the latter half of this year. That's even if the government eases the import of workers. This, as he said, the city might see a stronger rebound of international tourists around the third and fourth quarters. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun said there is no change to the cost of structure of fees for arranging Indonesian domestic workers to come to Hong Kong. Chris Sun said he has already informed the Indonesian Consulate General in Hong Kong about misinformation delivered by some organizations. It comes after representatives of an Indonesian domestic workers agency said last week that the cost of hiring a worker will go up, with employers having to pay more. Sun added these agencies do not represent the Indonesian government. A Pakistani boy was reportedly slapped by a teacher after failing to recite a Quran verse. That resulted in a retinal detachment on his left eye. Sources say the incident took place at an Islamic learning center in Quarry Bay last Saturday. The 13-year-old boy was reportedly struck in the back and the face by a male tutor who has been teaching the Quran to him and 20 other students at the center for 2 years. The Muslim Council of Hong Kong has received a complaint about the slapping, saying the boy had to go through 6 hours of surgery. The hospital authority noted the boy sought help from Eastern Hospital and remains in stable condition. The boy's family reported the incident to the police, and the case has also been referred to the Social Welfare Department. Meanwhile, the Education Bureau said the learning center in question never completed the relevant registration. Beijing's Ministry of State Security has uncovered a case concerning espionage activities of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA. It involves a Chinese national who used to work for a Chinese military-industrial group. Sharon Tang reports.
Chinese State Security Authority announced the arrest online. The 52-year-old suspect, surnamed Zheng, was a former staff member of a Chinese military-industrial group. The group earlier sent Zheng to Italy for studies. There, an official of the U.S. Embassy in Italy called Seth took the initiative to befriend Zheng. By taking him to dinner parties, outings, and trips to the opera, the two got closer, and eventually Zheng became psychologically dependent on Seth. Seth also took the advantage to instill Zheng with Western values and influenced his political stance. Later, Seth revealed to Zheng that he was a CIA agent based in Rome. He then sought sensitive information about the Chinese military from Zheng, promising to pay him a huge amount of remuneration and help Zheng's family migrate to the U.S. Zheng agreed and signed an espionage agreement with the U.S. and accepted the assessment and training from the U.S. Upon completing his studies, Zheng returned to China, where he provided on numerous occasions core intelligence to CIA personnel and pocketed espionage fees for his efforts. The Ministry of State Security said it had taken coercive measures against Zheng following a probe. The case has also been transferred to the Procuratorate for review and prosecution. In 2017, the New York Times reported that China had been dissolving its Chinese intelligence network at the CIA since 2010. But Director of CIA Bill Burns noted last month that it's made progress in building its intelligence network in China. At the time, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said it would take all necessary measures to firmly safeguard national security. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
The scale of devastation caused by wildfires in Hawaii is becoming clearer. It is a catastrophic picture. Over 50 are confirmed to have died. The town of Lahaina has been decimated. David Garrett reports.
There are still wildfires burning in Maui. For the most part, they've stopped, but left behind what the governor called a heartbreaking scene of devastation. The blazes are said to be 80% under control. What remains is a scorched land where homes and businesses once stood. It's now grey, flat and empty. Houses are gutted, trees are singed, cars burnt out, pavements are still smouldering. It started Tuesday and took the island by surprise, racing through parched lands and neighbourhoods in the historic coastal town of Lahaina. There's not much left. The scale of devastation from the air is horrific. Building after building, block after block razed to the ground. Structures turned to ash. One house ignited and then the embers from that blew along the street, setting fire to the next one. Residents were forced to flee, but not all could leave in time. Right on the coast, cars left abandoned on the sea road. Survivors had no choice but to dodge the flames by jumping into the water.
It got really real when we saw the flames. And I had to think fast. We had to get out. We left our vehicle, and myself, my wife, and our 5 kids, we all got in the ocean. Everything was burning around, explosions, cars blowing up, like embers was flying. We couldn't breathe. We couldn't breathe. There's no air. It's just the carbon monoxide, and we held on as best as we could. My wife, my kids.
People who have fled have been told not to return until authorities recover those that perished. This is said to be more devastating than the tsunami that hit Hawaii in the 1960s.
What we saw was likely the largest natural disaster in Hawaii's state history. We are seeing loss of life here. As you know, the number has been rising and we will continue to see loss of life.
It's a national disaster. President Joe Biden has made every resource available.
We're working as quickly as possible to fight these fires and evacuate residents and tourists. In the meantime, our prayers with the people of Hawaii, but not just our prayers. Every asset we have will be available to them.
Heat and fire warnings have been active across the islands for weeks. They are still in place. Drought, high winds and invasive grasses are a tinderbox.
A fire spreading from a shrub to shrub is more difficult than a fire spreading from a shrub to the grass, carrying it to the next shrub. So invasive grasses can actually cause fires to be easier to spread.
These tourists say it was a holiday destination that turned into hell on earth.
Let's bless everyone that survived, and there were some people that didn't survive. We heard screams, and it was terrible. And we were here.
David Garrett, TVB News.
Welcome back. Foreign Minister Wang Yi arrived in Singapore yesterday for a 2-day visit. Wang is also set to visit Malaysia and Cambodia during this trip. Ahead of Wang's arrival in Malaysia, Jackie Lin spoke with the Malaysian Consul General in Hong Kong on how Wang's visit could strengthen Sino-Malaysian ties.
In the South China Sea, tensions escalated over the past months with dramatic face-offs between Chinese and Filipino vessels. As a maritime flashpoint, the waterway has been claimed by multiple countries, including China and Malaysia. In April, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim also insisted on the country's oil and gas exploration rights around the contested waters, despite China's objections. Is it possible for both countries to discuss or even resolve their sovereignty claims of James Shoal, also known as Zhengmu Reef and Beting Surupai, in Foreign Minister Wang Yi's upcoming visit? Malaysian Consul General in Hong Kong, Muzambli Markham, explained his country's thinking on the issue.
For Malaysia, Beting Surupai is part of Malaysia. If there are any differences with our neighbors, we have this concept of friends to all, enemy to none. Today, geopolitical challenges is different. So, approach taken by Malaysia may be a bit different this time around for whatever issues that may arise, unless there is a mutual consent between partners.
As you said, Malaysia is very friendly to everyone, but given the current geopolitical climate globally, is it possible for Malaysia not to take sides?
Well, I don't think it's as easy as that in terms of military cooperation. With US, we have friendly relations since our Independence Day. Given that Malaysia and China enjoys very good bilateral relations, His Excellency Wang Yi's visit will serve to only cement our strong friendship. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations with China. To choose whether we're going to pivot to the west or to the east, we would like to pivot to all. And we have always had this balanced approach in our foreign policy. I believe we will continue to do so.
Also on Saturday, Malaysia would kick off its sixth-state election. The Consul General said Malaysians in Hong Kong and Macau could cast their vote via postal ballot. Late last month, Malaysia extended the 30-day visa-free stay period for Hong Kong passport holders to 90 days. On that, Consul General Muzambli hopes the policy would allow Hong Kong people who bought properties there to stay longer without having to travel between the two places frequently. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Philippine military officials visited bases near disputed waters on Thursday. They said Manila is looking at several options to strengthen its hold on the second Thomas Shoal in the South China Sea. The move could increase tensions with China. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Philippine military officials visited bases near disputed waters in the South China Sea on Thursday. The visits came almost a week after officials said the Chinese Coast Guard used water cannons near Philippine vessels. The tense hours-long standoff occurred last Saturday near the second Thomas Shoal. The shoal, which has been occupied for decades by Philippine forces, is stationed on board a rusting, grounded Navy ship, but is also claimed by China.
The less aggressive reception.
Vice Admiral Alberto Carlos, chief of the Philippine Western Command, said in a joint news conference with Military Chief Romeo Brawner Jr. that all courses of actions to prolong the Philippine presence there are being considered. He said one of them is the refurbishment of the grounded ship. Carlos added the Philippines' current priority is to resume the rotation and resupply mission for its troops on the atoll. Brawner Jr. also elaborated on Manila's plans.
Definitely we will try to deploy more ships and fishing vessels.
The Chinese Coast Guard has acknowledged its ships used water cannons against the Philippine vessels during last Saturday's incident. However, it said the Philippines' vessel had strayed without authorization into the shoal, which Beijing calls Renai Jiao. China accused the Philippines of going back on a pledge to remove the grounded Filipino warship from the shoal. Beijing has long demanded that the Philippines withdraw its naval personnel and tow away the still commissioned but crumbling ship, the BRP Sierra Madre. The ship was deliberately marooned on the shoal in 1999 and now serves as a symbol of Manila's territorial claim to the atoll. The disputes in the South China Sea, one of the world's busiest sea lanes, have long been regarded as a potential diplomatic flashpoint. Dan Orell, TVB News.
Late last month, a world record was shattered. Tenzin Sherpa and Norwegian climber Kristin Harila climbed the world's 14 highest mountains in record time in just over 3 months. But controversy has overshadowed the achievement. During the last climb of K2 in Pakistan, a porter was seriously injured, but the mountaineers continued the climb anyway. The porter later died on the slope. Some mountaineers are questioning if more could have been done to save the porter. Tracy Furness reports.
This is the moment on July 27th. Tenzin Sherpa and Kristin Harila arrived at the summit of K2 in Pakistan. The moment they broke the world record for scaling the world's 14 highest mountains, which are all over 8,000 meters high, in just over 3 months, breaking the last record set of 189 days. But Harila has been forced to defend herself. During the ascent, a porter was seriously injured and later died after a fall near the top of an area known as the bottleneck, 8,200 meters above ground level. Drone footage emerged online of the team stepping over his body while carrying on with the ascent. Harila claimed her team did everything they could to save Mr. Hassan, but conditions were too dangerous to move him. On a drone footage, he is being treated by one person while everyone else is heading towards the summit. Mountaineers say there was no organized rescue operation and the Sherpas and mountain guides on site could have taken action. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Back locally, the 3-day-long Golden Age Expo showcasing innovation in the aging industry began today. Entry is free. The expo is at the Convention and Exhibition Center. There are close to 130 exhibitors participating. Products on sale include home detection systems that will notify users of accidents encountered by elderly relatives and an exoskeleton that helps stroke victims to walk again. Some social welfare groups believe that the elderly community care service voucher could be used to rent such innovative products, a move they say which would benefit those most in need. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.